This bonus episode was brought to you by the Gackoids over on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. And now, on to the episode.
She might hear you. No, of course not. Anyway, Marge was beside herself with grief. She didn't know what she was saying.
Maybe not, but she said it pretty clearly. It was the house that got her.
I'm always late for everything around here. Yes, I'm going to take you back to the attic. The attic. He's funny. Ow! Hey! He won't let me go! Cut it out! Stop it! Let her go! Don't worry. Just a couple more seconds and everything will be okay. This can't be happening.
Kick it.
Welcome to Splat Attack, a 90s podcast overflowing into the slime-filled past. I'm your porcelain perpetrator, Brett.
And I'm your diabolical dummy, Alex. And Brett,
Yes.
what are we doing inside this oversized dollhouse today?
Well, Alex, every now and then I like to do these versus episodes between two popular 90s horror anthology shows to see how they hold up against each other. And today we've got two fan favorites from each series trading punches to determine which doll shall be declared the winner.
Well, I've got my G.I. Joe action figures right here, ready to kick some butt.
Well, I've got my Transmetal Tigerhawk Beast Wars action figure with missile launchers and a vehicle mode. Think you can take me on, 80s toy boy?
Whoa. Guys, save the heat for the versus match.
What? Who said that?
I did.
Oh, look who it is. It's our brand new multi-packaged articulated Judge Derek of like Goosebumps, only with more breakdancing podcasts. Wow, I always wanted one. We haven't seen you since our review of the Silver Side on your show. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome.
I'm really excited to talk about these because, like you said, I have a podcast, me and my friends, and we've talked about both of these episodes, and arguably they are both two iconic episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know how this is all going to shake out, but I'm excited to see it because these are two of my core foundational memories at this point.
Oh, this is going to be great then.
I'm excited.
Well, it looks like we got some action-packed child's play to take care of today, along with a little toy trauma to settle. But before we step into the ring, I need to know, were any of you ever afraid of dolls or dummies growing up?
Yeah. I mean, dummies in general are a scary thing, but as a millennial and like in the 90s, there is a level of like how they made dolls and stuff for us that is it doesn't relate. Like, kids are not going to grow up now and have like super scary dolls that are just sitting there, and they're also not going to have as many like my grandparents had these like antique dolls, and they just sat there like they like had a spot in their house on this like chair that was apparently purchased for said doll to just freak me out. And I've always had trouble sleeping even when I was like really little, so I get up in the night and go do stuff, and then in my grandma's there'd just be this like creepy porcelain doll just like all dressed and sitting with her like hands folded in her lap just like looking at you. I'm like, this is the worst vibe.
Yeah, it's like any moment they could just come alive and lunge at you. I definitely remember a lot of porcelain dolls growing up. My grandmother had a couple and like gave it to my sister Chelsea to play with here and there, and old-fashioned doll houses. And I remember, they were creepy to me, but they didn't bother me too much. I just didn't like how like their skin was pale white. Like, I thought if they had at least flesh tone like Barbies, it wouldn't be as creepy. So I had like a mild fear associated with dolls, mainly due to the dark music doll from another Are You Afraid of the Dark episode, because Holy crap, that thing is terrifying. If I was in a small space with a life-size doll who was just kind of float walking towards me, who wanted to suck me into a demon door, I'd be like, nope, I'm going to punch through this wall like the Kool-Aid Man to escape if I have to.
Hi, Andy. Won't you come play with me?
That doll is so funny to me. I'm so glad you brought it up because you know what it reminds me of? Did you ever see that Snickers commercial where the like two kids are dressed up in that big costume and they're like slamming all the Snickers off the shelf? And
I don't think I
they're like
have.
Snickers. That one?
Doesn't ring a bell, but it sounds really bizarre.
It was like maybe 10 years ago. It was a Halloween commercial, and these two kids are dressed up, and like one of them touches this like other person like mouth, and it's so funny when you watch it now. But that doll, those two, like for some reason sit in my head. And if you like get a chance, just look up Snickers Halloween like old woman or something. Crazy.
Well, yeah, if I find a clip of that, I'll put it here.
Hello, Mrs. Jensen. You don't have any Snickers in your shopping cart. The neighborhood kids love Snickers on Halloween. Let me help you. I'm only helping. Snickers.
This Halloween, nothing satisfies like Snickers.
But dummies used to scare me a lot more than dolls growing up. And I mainly blame this really creepy looking Mo dummy in this like beige plaid tweed kind of suit that my grandma had and gave it to my Uncle Phil, who was a teenager in the 90s. And I used to like visit her and him a lot. And I just hated his like blank expression. And every time she like operated his mouth, his like arms would wiggle. So, and she would do it really close to my face too. So I'm like, he's coming alive, get away from me. I would literally have nightmares of that thing like getting up and like coming to my bed and strangling me because my bed was very low to the floor. And I just could not handle it. Like eventually I convinced my grandmother to give it to my mom's boyfriend a couple decades later so that I wouldn't have to look or think about it again. But that thing always bugged me when it was just sitting in this dark Venetian blind closet staring at me from like the opposite corner of my Uncle Phil's bedroom. Ugh. And, you know, of course, plenty of other dummies from my childhood really hammer that home. Stop looking at me, Alex. Stop it. Plenty of other dummies really drove that fear home too, like Twilight Zone dummy episodes like The Dummy and Caesar and Me. There's this one Tales from the Dark Side episode I remember where this dummy just like ran really fast and killed people that I vaguely remember. Of course, there's Stevel from Family Matters, which I actually didn't see till this past year with my wife, but I didn't like the way he moved. It was really creepy. And I didn't like how the dad cop guy, I think his name's Mr. Winslow, he got turned into a dummy too in like the sequel to it, and that was equally creepy.
Steve, what have they done to you? What an awful, terrible night! When will this ever end? Very soon. One soul down, one to go.
So yeah, don't like any of those. And you know, I don't know what it is about my grandma and having weird stuff, because she also had this headless mannequin in her like bathroom that she would never use in her split level, and it was just like standing there without a head in the shower with no light on. It was like pitch black and like this weird like frosted glass, and there was no other bathroom in the area of where I was at the time when I visited her, so I'd have to use that bathroom when I had to go and like run past it and hope it didn't like creep out of the bathroom trying to lock me into the bathroom, because I didn't know what it was there and why it was there and all that stuff. So too many bad memories. Too many. Luckily though, at least there was a few good dummies from my past that I can think about when life gets too rough. And Of course, there's Buster from Doug's No Dummy that comes to mind, and Skeeter replacing him, which brings some comic relief to my life. You know, the doy dot, the dasket doll is what I remember.
Stay tuned for the hit show Doug's No Dummy. Starring Doug Funny and his dummy, Buster.
The doy dot, the basket doll.
From that episode. And then, of course, Jeff Dunham's characters like Peanut, Walter, and Ahmed the Dead Terrorist. I mean, those are just plain good fun. And he's really good at ventriloquism / puppetry. So it helped me come to terms with my dummy fear since childhood, to not be as bothered by it. But I figure I'd share because it's always good to share horror stories with people to, you know, see how we can relate to them.
And I have said before that I was a very frightful child, but dummies was never something that I was really scared of. In fact, I was really fascinated by them. I had actually gone into doing puppets at my church and got very, very good at it. We used to go to puppet festivals, because yes, that's a thing, where they would critique your performance, and they would give you bronze, silver, or gold and give you critiques on how to do better. And they would do skits and mimes and dramatizations and puppets and ventriloquist, and I mean, they did all these wonderful things. So, and I was always more fascinated by how dummies and puppets would work and the different kinds. Wienerville was a big part of it because I got to see puppets. Muppets also was really cool, but dummies are very different. And movies like Child's Play, the idea scared me, but I was also really interested to know how they made this movie, because I know it's fake, but my imagination would sometimes get the best of me, but my grounded reality was still very much there, because I've been, how do they do this? And so dummies never really scared me. Goosebumps, I remember seeing Goosebumps. I remember seeing Night of the Living Dummy many times. I remember going to the Scholastic Book Fair and seeing, I was surprised to see that there was a 2 and 3 of Night of the Living Dummy. I was like, oh, they did more of these? I have no idea.
There's the book cover right there.
That's right.
That one caught my attention there.
And I didn't see the TV series episodes of 2. And they did 3 also, did they not?
They did 2, 3, Bride of the Living Dummy. Yeah, those 3.
Yeah. I didn't see any of those as a kid. I just saw the first one. And not because I was avoiding it. I never saw them for some reason. And of course, Are You Afraid of the Dark? I had said before, I was too terrified of Are You Afraid of the Dark? I didn't see anything past Candid, or the Camera episode, and Zebo. Those are the only 2 that I saw, and I couldn't do anymore. But there are 2, since we're talking dummy episodes, there are 2 things that really they really come to mind, because I've said before, I'm a huge Supernatural fan, and I mean, my boys are named after the show. And there was one episode that I'd love to hope, since this is for our Gakoids, hopefully we can watch this as a live stream some night, combined with these 2 episodes, since we just do a big doll episode. But there was one episode where there was a ghost that was haunting a child, and it was haunting through dolls, and it was all those old antique dolls that Derek was talking about. It was an old inn, and it was a child had died, a child had drowned, and they were using the dolls to haunt the other child who was still living in the house or living in the inn. It was super creepy.
Hey, are those antique dolls? Because this one here, he's got a major doll collection back home, don't you? Huh?
Big time.
Big time. Yeah. You think he could come in? Well, we could come in and take a look.
I don't know.
Please. I mean, he loves them. He's not going to tell you this, but he's always dressing them up in these little tiny outfits, and I mean, you'd make his day. She would. Huh? Huh?
It's true.
Okay, come on in.
All right.
All right.
But there was and that was an episode in season 2 called Playthings. Later in season 4, there was an episode that was called Family Remains, and it's supposed to be an abandoned house, and then Dean Winchester, the oldest brother, he opens his closet door, and there was one little doll head just sitting in the closet with all the hair shaved, just sitting there, and Dean just looks at it and goes, well, that's not the creepiest thing ever.
Ugh. Well, that's super disturbing.
And I lose it every time.
Oh my gosh.
So,
You just triggered another memory in me. That creepy doll head on that weird like erector set spider thing from Toy Story 1. Holy pardon my language, but that deserves a swear. Oh no. Get out of here. What are you doing in my child movie?
I think that was supposed to be a Casper baby doll head.
Oh, like from the 50s?
Yeah, they had just painted the face a more flesh tone color, but because Casper was obviously white. But I think that's what they said. It was a Casper doll head that they had just painted up and then put the erector set to it.
Fascinating. I did not know that. Well, it was very effective in creeping me out, that's for sure. Derek, any doll or dummy memories from your childhood?
We talked about dolls. I mean, I like inherently, I feel like this weird connection with like ventriloquist dummies in general. Like they're just like a part of my history, but I have nothing to like hold on to. But you bring up like Muppets and things like that, and like I grew up loving them, right? So when I was a kid, they would do live shows and then you'd go there and you'd go to it. But the thing is because these got so popular, there were all these like branch off things that like came out of nowhere. And I live in Washington State, and there is this like this guy, his name is Tim Noah, right? And like nobody, even people here don't remember him. Like he just made like he made songs for kids and performed around at schools and stuff. And he made this one like short film. He did all these like short musical films, and they'd have themes. One was like a Western one, but the one that I remember, and hopefully I don't butcher this, it was called the Wow Wow Wibble Wobble Wazzy Woodle Woo. Nailed it in one.
Awesome.
And it's just like him like he's like a kid in it, and they built this like big set, so he looks much smaller than he actually is, and it's about him like trying to get through life as a kid and like eating vegetables and remembering to do his chores or whatever. But there's this like one segment in it where it's about like the things that scare him in night, and they create these like big oversized like puppets that people get into, and they're just like giant. Like the heads are like way oversized, and then the feet are like massive feet, like boards like sticking way out, and like
think big.
Yeah. And so it's like super like impressive when you're watching it. Now here's the thing, they took this show on the road, and when they did, like you could go see it, right? And so like we got to see one performance with my school, and that was cool, but I saw it 2 other times because I was obsessed with it as a kid. Like I just loved it. My parents probably hated this thing more than anything because of how much I watched it, and it's not good. Like it's just some guy that could have been my neighbor who got like a little bit of money to make this. Like it wasn't national or anything, and so I made them take me to it every time it came. And then one time he like invited kids on stage during this scene to like dance with him. And then I was up there, and I remember being next to him, and like I'd seen him forever, so I wasn't scared of him until I was right next to him. And then I was like, this is the most terrifying. I'm gonna get hurt. I think this thing is going to hurt me, a very little kid. Why have my parents let me die this way on this stage in front of everybody? They gave me to these monsters. And I think that is like my biggest like sort of like puppet, like dummy memory.
Wow. I mean, that's a very unique experience, and I'm sure I'd feel the same way if I were in your shoes. just because the proximity and like the nature of it and everything.
The title that you said that was reminds me of the Nickelodeon and PBS show Wobulous World of Dr. Seuss.
Yeah. I think it probably came out a little before that, but like I've always loved like those like mouthful titles, and this was one of the best. There's a whole song for that too. Like I don't know how easy it is to find it, but if you get a chance, just look up Tim Noah and see if you can't YouTube some of it, because it's wild and probably bad, like in retrospect. But I loved it so much.
Yeah. Let's enter the ring, glove up, and get this versus show on the road.
Let's get ready to versus!
Fight.
Okay, so before we smash each other to porcelain bits, what are our versus categories today, Derek?
For this versus battle, we'll be covering the following that I'll be judging: story, main human character, main doll character, use of doll theme, lasting appeal.
Alex, take it away with your episode info, and then I'll share mine, and then we'll just go into our first category.
All right. I am going to be defending, obviously, Are You Afraid of the Dark? And I will be doing the Tale of the Dollmaker, which was from Season 3, Episode 5, and it originally aired on
February 5th, 1994.
And I'm very excited because I can actually say all of these names without messing them up. Haha! It was written by David Preston and directed by David Winning.
And for my episode, Night of the Living Dummy 2, that was Season 1, Episode 10.
And its air date was January 12th, 1996.
It was written by Rick Drew and directed by Ron Oliver, who we also know from Are You Afraid of the Dark?
All right, well, jumping into story, because there's quite a bit of story for both of these episodes. For the Tale of the Dollmaker, the episode begins with Tucker sprinting into the campfire pit, where the rest of the Midnight Society is awaiting Betty Ann to begin her story. Sam catches him at the last moment before he falls into the campfire, just as Gary tells Betty Ann he's told him good things about her weird stories. Once she pulls out a porcelain doll, however, Tucker immediately dismisses the premise of her story and takes a siesta right then and there. Betty Ann opens her story, explaining how dolls are so lifelike, that makers might have shrunk humans down to miniature size. She adds, but that's not how dolls are made. Or is it? After Betty Ann throws the midnight dust onto the campfire and reveals the title of her story, the audience is then thrust into a rural fall setting where we meet Melissa, a curious young adolescent girl visiting her Uncle Pete and Aunt Sally for the weekend. She's excited to spend time with a girl named Susan who lives next to her relatives, but upon arriving, Aunt Sally breaks the bad news about the Hendersons moving away. Melissa is deflated by the news because she was really looking forward to playing with their daughter Susan all weekend. Melissa looks back from her relatives and peers at the attic door of their house, sensing someone might still be there despite it being vacated for months. In the next scene, Melissa breaks the unfortunate news to her mother. Aunt Sally enters announcing it's time to leave for bingo, and Melissa claps, oh, yay, bingo. We cross-dissolve to where Uncle Pete asks Melissa to help with the septic tank. Joyous fun for every child. She turns the offer down, as any kid would, while she reflects on the tire swing. Melissa glances at the door to nowhere at the top of the Hendersons' former house. She casually sneaks inside the Henderson house and makes her way upstairs to look for any signs of life behind the old, water-stained walls of the hallway. Melissa pushes aside some hanging clothes in a closet, revealing a ladder leading into the attic. Inside we see a bunch of junk, a harp, a vintage baby carriage, and a pristine dollhouse in the middle of the actual Henderson house sitting on a card table. Melissa peers inside to examine the dollhouse, admiring the miniature details from the fruit bowl to the painted portraits on the wall. Suddenly, she sees a tiny door slam in the room she's looking into, and she falls back into some draped curtains, startled. The curtain falls, revealing the other side of the door to nowhere. Melissa gets back up on her feet and is eerily drawn to the pastel-painted door. Before she can touch the doorknob, Aunt Sally crashes the party. Her aunt demands why she is here, and Melissa replies she thought she saw someone in the window. On the way back to their house, Aunt Sally warns Melissa not to meddle in the Hendersons' house while they're watching it, because they're watching it for them. Melissa asks, why not? To which she doesn't want any precious things behind being tampered with. Aunt Sally hints at an event that happened there concerning her, but Melissa interrogates further. On their porch, Aunt Sally explains Susan disappeared last summer, but no one could find her. Not her parents, or even the whole town, and the guilt drove her parents away. However, they're holding on to it just in case she ever comes back. Later that night, Melissa eavesdrops on her relatives arguing in the other room about how Susan disappeared. Uncle Pete mentions it was the house that got her. Melissa scurries back to bed, undetected. Moments later, she hears whispering, beckoning her to come back to the house. She steals Uncle Pete's ring of keys and makes her way back into the attic and makes a beeline for the dollhouse. She looks inside with her flashlight and notices a light silhouette of a keyhole appearing on the wall of the dollhouse. Once again, she's drawn to the pastel-painted door in the attic and peers into the flood of light. She witnesses in astonishment Susan wandering around a brightly lit hallway looking for Melissa. She's looking rather pale in the face and is wearing a pink old-fashioned nightgown. Entranced by the sight, Melissa carefully extends her foot into the door, but just before she can step through, Uncle Pete grabs her and yanks her away, keeping her from nearly plummeting to her death. Full-on Game of Thrones. The brightly lit room, or Susan, is nowhere to be found in the immediate after. The next day, Uncle Pete carries a bunch of boards to secure the door to nowhere, and Sally misinterprets Melissa's sight as an illusion and questions what could she be doing in the attic after all this time. However, Melissa is undeterred. For a third time, she slinks back into the house with a hammer and a ball of string, bashing open one of the window panes near the front door handle, breaking and entering, some pretty serious stuff even for a child, and lets herself in, leaving shattered glass on the floor. She removes all the boards and once again opens the pastel-painted door leading to this brightly lit hallway. Melissa loops her string to the door handle and tests the floor to see if it's solid enough to walk on, and enters the brightly lit hallway, string in hand. Suddenly, she feels and hears heavy thumping in the living room. She notices a massive Aunt Sally looking around for Melissa. She twists her ring in worry, then leaves. It's no use. She can't hear you. The camera swish pans to Susan, sitting in the dollhouse dining room, showing zero emotion on her face, with pale white skin and rouge makeup. Susan mentions the attic to Melissa. Melissa reassures her they'll find a way out. Melissa returns to the hallway, but the doorway she used to enter the dollhouse has suddenly vanished. Quickly thinking on her feet, Melissa enlists Susan's help to move the bureau in order to reach the attic ladder. With her energy fading, Susan utters, "I can't," and removes her porcelain hand to state her point. Melissa knocks over the bureau and rises into the dollhouse attic, which is much more decorated with oversized objects this time, adorned with objects such as a large teddy bear, an ornament, 2 rolled-up notes, scissors, a kangaroo, a pencil. Melissa carries Susan to the attic door, but her spirit is fading fast, becoming more and more lifeless with every step. Melissa opens the dollhouse door, but sees nothing but the outside of the actual house beyond the threshold. Despite the intimidating appearance, Melissa grabs Susan, and they make a literal leap of faith through the weird invisible bulge between realities. Uncle Pete and Aunt Sally wallow in despair over Melissa's disappearance, but their hopes are fully restored when they notice Melissa running back to them and waving happily. Aunt Sally runs to her and gives her a hug, and they look back at the Henderson house. Susan reappears on the porch, fully restored as a human, hand and all. Aunt Sally cries tears of joy, and they all run towards Susan to welcome her back. Susan and Melissa run off to play gleefully. Then we cut back to the Midnight Society campfire, where Betty Ann explains how Uncle Pete burned the dollhouse and a big bonfire in the backyard, and how Melissa pondered where the door in the real house's attic would lead to now the connection has been permanently severed. Tucker wakes up, intrigued by the story. Gary closes the meeting by dumping water on the fire. Just before everyone leaves, Tucker notices a strange porcelain doll sitting against a log. Tucker picks up the doll that looks just like him, astonished. Betty Ann floats out of the woodland shadows, stating to Tucker that doll is for a whole other story, and she leaves with the rest of the Midnight Society trailing behind her. End of the episode.
That episode is by the way, that breakdown is beautiful. As somebody who does a podcast in which I poorly remember episodes right after watching them and try to get all that out, like, well done. Well,
was and to be fair, Brett, was that you or was that Manny who wrote all that?
This is all me. You know, with Are You Fear the Dark, I take it seriously.
You do.
I just conveyed it, but Brett took the reins on coming up with a description. So credit where credit is due.
Thank you.
That episode, okay, so I love that episode. That is when I think of Are You Afraid of the Dark, and before we started rewatching it, that was an episode that would pop into my head. It was one of two that I would always get in my head, the other being The Tale of Quicksilver, which I've talked about.
That's a great one.
But this one always popped into my head. It's so iconic when you see her as the doll, right? You're just like, that's terrifying. Like, it looks so good. The thing that I always love in this episode, now that I've gotten to watch it a couple times, is that when they have that argument about like the house next door, they have this big, beautiful house from the exterior. They stand 2 feet away from her.
Yeah.
And apparently she sleeps in the sunroom. What is that room she's in?
Yeah, sketchy.
You shouldn't have lied to her about the Henderson girl in the first place.
I didn't want to ruin her weekend.
You didn't tell her what Marge Henderson said about the house, did you?
Shh. She might hear you. No, of course not.
There was something I wondered, though, and Brett, you would, well, I'm assuming you both would probably have a better answer for this than me, but when they both had disappeared into the house, and obviously Susan was very, very near becoming a complete doll, how much time really passed for them in reality? Because when they came back, I can't imagine the aunt and uncle being so distraught if she was missing for an hour or two.
That's a good question. It's unclear, but there were hints in the story that, you know, they've Melissa and Susan have been like hanging out for the past few summers because she comes to this rural area to, you know, visit her relatives. And I feel like it was like after the last time she visits. So let's say she like comes there for like, I don't know, August or September. It looks like there's a little bit of fall going on. After she leaves, I think this thing happened where Susan went back to her playing with her dollhouse, and maybe she found a new feature in it that she didn't really notice before and somehow got sucked in, because cursed objects tend to do that in Are You Afraid of the Dark.
Yeah.
So where it gets a little hazy is how long exactly she's been in there, because I want to feel like it's almost a year, but not quite. But yet, even though it's been that long of a time, I feel like she should have already turned into a full-fledged doll, not just like her face and her hands, because it was affecting Melissa a lot faster. So I think there's some continuity issues with like how it affects someone, or if it like is dependent on more factors like their mental and physical will or something to that extent. So I can't say for sure because I didn't write the episode, but I can only draw those conclusions based on what we're given.
My hands. There's got to be another way out of here.
I wonder if the like the thing that like connects. So because Susan like loved the dollhouse or whatever, I wonder if that like had something more to do with like her transition, or maybe the amount of time it took.
It's possible.
You know, she got to play longer inside the dollhouse because she came there and was welcome there, and was there for the dollhouse's sake rather than Melissa, who was just like there. And maybe that's why it was like, well, this is foreign and doesn't care about the dollhouse at all, so let's just make her a doll now.
That's a very good point. Like maybe there's a sentience to the dollhouse we're not seeing, where it try to detects a friend or foe, and that determines how fast or how powerful its spell is on them. From like miniaturizing them and also turning them into porcelain. So that's a very good point, Derek. I'm on board with that.
I wonder who built this dollhouse. Like,
I've always wanted to know that. Like ever since the story ended, I'm like, is this the parents who made it for their child? Is the father like a toy maker? Is there like a tinker downtown that's like Sardo, has cursed objects but they're toys? Like
Gozer.
There's so much wiggle room here. I need to know. I even went to Arlstein's Haunting Hour to watch their doll episodes to see if they can make connections, and I didn't get very far. I need to write the sequel.
I mean, that could have been like another like avenue for like, because we have Sardo, right?
Yeah.
Your Vink, right? Another thing would be like a toy maker.
Oh, it could be Mr. Olsen because he repairs like pinball machines and other weird artifacts. That could be his doing.
And somebody ended up in that
inside of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's possible.
You told me I could trust you, Ross. But you had to play the game, didn't you?
I like that the parents, Susan's parents just left. They're just like, I don't know, watch the house, or our daughter is gone. We don't need to be here anymore. If she comes back, just tell her we're gone.
Yeah. They also must be stupid rich because they must have like a summer home or multiple houses where they can be able to do that. Like, oh, I guess we'll just hold on to this house just in case she comes back. Meanwhile, I can't even afford a house this day and age. So it's like, it must be nice to have that.
Did either of you watch Eddie Murphy's Delirious stand-up?
I don't think I have.
He did a joke on there talking about Poltergeist and how the child was sucked into the TV, and he was like, why don't they just leave? I mean, she was only like 6 years old. They couldn't have been that too attached to her. Be like, Dad, why didn't you, that was your daughter, didn't you try to get her? Yeah, I tried. I changed the channel. It didn't work. I left.
It's okay. You can make another kid. They're not that hard. No, I didn't want to go that dark. Well, I guess we'll move around to my episode, which is Night of the Living Dummy 2. And the story is as follows. The story opens with a beautiful establishing shot of suburban ranch-style home. We zoom into the living room to see Sarah showing off her landscape painting of the family house to her siblings and the parents on the living room couch. Mom and Dad sing their praises while Amy suddenly remarks, "You showed that painting to us last family night." Their brother pops in a VHS tape of a home movie showcasing each of his family members candidly caught in embarrassing situations at home. Amy stops the tape, and the family squabbles a bit. Amy asks for her turn to show off her ventriloquist dummy, Dennis. Before she can finish her joke, Dennis's head springs off his neck onto the floor. Amy is totally embarrassed. But Dad has a surprise for Amy. A replacement, secondhand dummy in a leather trunk named Slappy. Amy is thrilled to use the new dummy. She reads a strange cluster of words on the card in his pocket, then hugs her new companion. The camera whirls around to show Slappy moving his eyes suspiciously towards her. That night, Amy practices her routine with Slappy, but before she finishes her second joke, and we hear Slappy's voice change, Sarah interrupts the moment, telling her to get out of her room. Amy leers at her sister, and Slappy echoes Amy's words. "Yeah, well, we don't have to." Amy places Slappy next to Dennis on her wooden bench in her bedroom. Suddenly, we hear a thud, and we follow Amy back to Dennis, who picks him up from the floor. We cut to a dark blue POV of something long and dripping moving and then entering Sarah's bedroom. One musical stinger later, the family enters Sarah's room first thing in the morning to witness a stick figure family painted in red on Sarah's house portrait. Sarah immediately blames Amy for the misdeed, but she denies she had anything to do with it. Everyone in the family blames her, and she storms out of the room. Amy grabs her backpack, then touches Slappy's hands, apologizing for her family's attitude. She then notices red paint on Slappy's hands. Slappy looks away, then lowers his eyebrows sinisterly. We cut back to the living room where Mr. Kramer plays a rousing rendition of If You're Happy and You Know It. Oh, I was thinking of Bus Driver Stu for this one.
If you're happy and you know it, knock your head. If you're happy and you know it, knock your head.
Dad introduces Amy and Slappy to the floor. Amy begins her routine and tells a couple of jokes, which get a chuckle or two from Dad. Amy asks what Slappy thought of her dad's song, and we hear a change of tone in his voice make a nasty comment about his singing and playing. Dad drops his smile. One by one, Slappy insults each of the Kramers with rude remark after remark. Amy pleads she can't stop him because her hand is caught in the dummy's back. The insults keep flying as Sarah rips Slappy away from Amy. Dad sends Amy to bed and Slappy, while the rest of her family gives her dirty looks. Off-kilter toy music plays while Amy slams Slappy into his steamer trunk. Later that day, we see Amy hanging out with her friend Margot as they color a Save the Rainforest poster in Sarah's room. Sarah enters berating Amy for using up her markers. While tensions are high, Margot's little sister Alicia removes Slappy from his trunk and plays with him. Slappy grabs Alicia with a death grip, cackling in the most evil way imaginable. Amy shouts at Slappy to let Alicia go. Feeling offended, Margot and Alicia leave, claiming they aren't friends anymore from this point forward. The mom scolds Amy for the offense, despite Amy trying to clear her name. Amy's frustration boils over while Slappy laughs at her from the bed. The family calls an emergency meeting to try and help Amy, claiming she is mentally ill and needs help. Amy once again storms off the stairs after hearing the untrue accusations. Later that night, we see everyone asleep, with the parents resting on the living room couch, with white noise on the TV playing in front of them. We see a shadow of Slappy on the stairwell as he grabs Dad's guitar and prepares to slam it into Amy's parents. The parents wake up, blame Amy yet again for her erratic behavior. She cries out to them and leaves after her dad sentences her to bed. Slappy shifts his eyes while Mom looks away holding him by the neck. Slappy's just getting started with his string of mischief. The next day at the breakfast table, the parents ask Amy what they should do about her unusual, disturbing behavior. They further add they don't know what to do if she keeps blaming Slappy for everything. Once again, Amy sighs and utters, "But I'm telling the truth!" Flustered, both parents leave for the day. Amy stares at her breakfast forlorn. We fade to a sidewalk where Amy's friend and a group of girls are posting the rainforest flyers all over town. Amy says hi to Margot, but she completely ignores her, and the group leaves. Amy slips Slappy out of a purple pillowcase, chastises Slappy, and throws him into a gutter. Back at home, Sarah wonders how Amy managed to wreck Dad's guitar. She yells at Amy while she makes her way back to her bedroom. We see a trail of muddy miniature footsteps leading there. Amy turns back to see Slappy fully animated. Slappy explains to Amy she'll be locked up and put away. Past her breaking point, Amy tackles Slappy. Then Sarah enters the room. Both girls witness Slappy turn his head 180 towards them, asking them to play. Sarah and Amy scream, running to another bedroom and locking the door. Sarah apologizes Amy for blaming her earlier. We see footsteps under the door walk by. Both girls wander down into the dark living room looking for their brother Jed. We hear various items break in the background, leading to the girls spotting Slappy taunting them in the chandelier. Slappy suddenly trips Amy from under a coffee table, then hoists himself onto it. Slappy claims, "From now on, this family's mine." Suddenly, a blurry red figure slams Slappy into the fireplace, cracking his head and releasing a green, eerie fog from his head. The parents rush downstairs to see what's going on. Amy rushes to hug her parents, wondering if Jed saved them from Slappy. Jed claims he didn't do it. They all turn around to witness Dennis standing on the table chuckling, "It's good to be back in the family again." Close up of his maniacal face while the family stares back in shock. End of the episode. So what do you guys feel about this episode and all of his appearances on the Goosebump book covers? And if you have any thoughts about why they started with Night of the Living Dummy 2 for this episode instead of the first one.
I was hoping somebody could shed light on that for me, because I don't understand why. Like, for starters, you have to say Night of the Living Dummy 2 to start. Like, that's crazy. That's a crazy place to start.
Yeah.
This episode is the most wild. I have so many thoughts and feelings about like this family and their awful tradition of show and tell.
Yeah.
That's a crime. That's a criminal
torture.
crime.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all in good fun for 90s TV.
Nah, it's too corny.
It's so corny.
Well, I mean, Goosebumps is kind of corny. The series, well, I mean, Are You Afraid of the Dark has had its moments, but Goosebumps has had its moments of being sincere. Most of the time, it's just over the top cheese ball, but that's the charm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this look. That being said, this is still such a great like showing for Goosebumps, especially in the series of like the episodes, and like this one is unique in like, even though there's a lot of cheesy things, and like I'm just super thankful that Slappy fixed what's the older sister's name? Sarah. Yeah, fixed her painting. He made it better, and we all have to admit that to ourselves, that those stick figures really brought it together.
Yeah, less yellow, more red.
It's nice. The family is the craziest thing I've ever seen. Like, all of them are just the most wild.
I actually feel bad for Amy, because throughout the entire episode, everyone's acting like she's crazy, and she's just trying to play it straight. Like, no, there's something wrong with this dummy, don't you see? But, you know, being the typical 90s parents, they don't listen to the rationality of their child and immediately put blame on them. And I think that's irresponsible and very sad for her to be in that situation.
There's no like reasoning, like thoughtful reasoning. Like, our daughter did not act this way prior to this dummy existing. Our daughter is acting this way now that it's here. We can't weigh that out, 90s parents, all you 90s parents.
Not to mention that mannish voice that comes out of Slappy. I mean, I don't think that's easy for a young girl to do.
How do you like being part of the Kramer family so far?
It's fantastic, but then my last family was a pine tree.
So what did you think of Dad's song?
That was your dad? Well, what a relief. I thought the cat got stuck in the dishwasher.
Yeah, it's crazy. I like that his hands. Here's the thing about Slappy, and I believe I said this when the first time I watched it again. It's for a maniacal genius, he makes a lot of really simple, dumb mistakes that you're like, you literally got caught red-handed. Like, that's embarrassing for you, Slappy. That's embarrassing for you. And then to reveal his crime when he revealed it, it's terrible timing.
Mm-hmm.
He could have gotten her put away so easily.
He could have waited after and then terrorized the other siblings one by one and just destroyed the family from the inside out.
But I only have 20 minutes to tell this story, so I got to hurry it.
I mean, Goosebumps is no stranger to the two-parters. They could have extended if they really wanted to.
Yes.
Heck, they do Night of the Living Dummy 3 as a two-parter, and that didn't need to be that long.
Can I ask a question? What's Slappy's motivation?
That is very good to know. Like, what is he going to accomplish by destroying the family?
Yeah, why does he want that so bad?
Fun.
Is that just
fun? Something to do.
Personal gratification, yeah. Mm-hmm. I guess he doesn't think his plan's all the way through. I don't think it's quite on the caliber of world domination just yet. He's more like a playful imp. Yeah. In regards to the first Night of the Living Dummy being skipped over, from what I remember, because I used to watch the Goosebumps reviews on Pop Arena's YouTube channel, because he covers like Nickelodeon as well as Goosebumps and a few other things. And I believe the first story, number 7 of the book series, only talks about this other dummy called Mr. Wood. And it sounded like from the review, there was like hardly any plot there at all. It's just about that dummy that's not Slappy, even though we think it's Slappy based on the cover. Unfortunately, I haven't read that book growing up. I was one of those kids who literally bought all the Goosebumps books because I loved the art on the cover and only read like maybe 10% of them. So I can't speak about the story in particular. But if Disney Plus ever releases that Goosebumps series remake that has been announced in the past couple of years, apparently, according to IMDb, Night of the Living Dummy is supposed to be the first episode of that reboot. So I'm looking forward to that and how they handle it.
That'll be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting to see how Disney does a horror anthology show, because that's not their bag. So I'm interested to see how this goes.
I'm waiting for Mickey to pop out with like an axe and red eyes and like sharp teeth. And
I will say they did really, really good with the Marvel Zombies What If episode. I didn't think they'd go that far with it. So I'd have a glimmer of hope for how well this might be.
Oh, Disney can't do horror. Have you seen Mr. Boogedy?
Yeah.
Modern Disney.
Yeah,
old school Disney, they didn't pull punches. I mean, movies like Something Wicked This Way Comes.
That's what I was thinking too. I'm like, that movie is genuinely terrifying. And Return to Oz.
Yes.
Yeah. I gotta rewatch those again. Those are all classics. I totally forgot about them until you said it. All right, moving on to our second category, the main human character. Alex, will you take it away for us, please?
Yes. Okay, now we're going to get back to Alex can't pronounce names right. The main character is Melissa, played by, is it Maya? Did I pronounce that right? Maya Filler?
Yep, you got it.
Maya Philharmonic. She's a very cheerful, very snarky child. I mean, we see her sarcasm whenever she gets to go to bingo. And how she is so excited to not help with the septic tank.
Septic tank. Gee, sounds like fun, but no thanks.
But that's no kid really wants to be part of that.
Fun fact, I actually did help my dad with the septic tank growing up because he's in residential construction. So he's like, Brett, I'm going to teach you how to repair a house. You might as well start with this exhaust pipe that's poking out of the ground that's shooting poop everywhere. Yeah, 90s kids.
But she's a very happy kid. I mean, for the first few minutes that she's at the place, she's very happy. I mean, she's not one of your stereotypical Are You Afraid of the Dark protagonists where she's either a jerk or she's really lonely and depressed, because you kind of have those two. It's or a bickering couple of some kind. It's not too often when you get a genuine, I'm just in a good mood, happy kid, and then realizes my weekend has been ruined. But she wasn't upset that her weekend was ruined necessarily. There's a little bit, but she was more disappointed with the fact that her friend is gone. And now that her friend is gone, now that she's faced with that reality of, well, crap, I love my family, but they're boring. What am I going to do? But once she realizes that somebody's in the house, now she's taking it upon herself to go and investigate, and she's more intrigued. But the more she begins to unravel how there's some supernatural elements and my friend might be here, now she's setting aside everything to go investigate to see if her friend is okay. And once she sees her friend, she knows she's there. And I will risk everything to get over there. And then when aunt and uncle tell her, no, don't go over there for whatever the reasons may be, I love you, I respect you, but that's my friend. And you're not believing me. You're thinking I'm making something up. You're thinking that I maybe dreamed this. And she was actually very smart going about it. She was testing the floor from where she had almost fallen before through the window, because she saw one thing, and then when she came back again, or looked a second time, saw it was really going to go out the window and fall to her death. Now she's being very careful with the floor, and then with the rope to make sure that she has, the breadcrumb, the lifeline to be able to get back to exit, but all that was taken away. And then while her friend couldn't communicate the way that she normally would have, because she had reverted to becoming more like a porcelain doll, she was able to take those little bits of clues that she was able to give and piece it all together very, very fast. She was a very intuitive, unique, resourceful child, probably more so than we've seen on Are You Afraid of the Dark. And while she isn't rebellious in nature, she's more protective in nature and facing courage, because now she's realizing that she also is in physical danger. But even then, it's less worry about her and still more worry about her friend. And again, having to take that leap of faith at the very end, it's either we take a risk here and potentially die, or we're going to die if we stay here. And that's a big thing. That's a heavy thing for any kid. And of course it paid off in the end for her, but that's some big risks that she took to take care of her friend. And that's a really commendable protagonist, human character. And Brett, being the ever sleuth that he is with all things Are You Afraid of the Dark, did point out some other things in the notes for this episode. Maya, again, who was Melissa in this episode, was also in the Goosebumps Calling All Creeps episode, where she played the antagonist Tasha McClane, which is it was our first Are You Afraid of the Dark versus Goosebumps episode on episode 16 for us. And Maya also has last acted in 2001 when she was in The Sims House Party video game, and now she writes for shows like Property Brothers and most recently Big Food Bucket List.
I'm sorry, Property Brothers is scripted?
What gave it away?
That feels so realistic.
Yeah. I mean, she must be a really good writer then. You know, all that work on the school newspaper and framing Ricky.
Yeah.
That's how she rose to the top. Well, for Night of the Living Dummy 2, we have our main character, Amy Kramer, who's played by Maggie Castle. She's a girl who constantly dumped on, not just by her parents, but her friends and family too. I mean, she really can't get a break in this one, and I very much sympathize with her. It's only until the end of the tale we see the others come around to her side. And once both dummies drop the charade and unleash their havoc upon the Kramers, she too, you know, in her denial of her family's accusations, remains faithful to the truth until the secret can no longer be kept by Slappy. She is a sympathetic victim, as I mentioned before, who finds strength and perseverance despite every force working against her in this episode. And she's all the stronger for surviving it too. Unfortunately, we don't see too much with her character depth. It's really just like she's passionate about ventriloquism. You know, she does girly things like try on her sister's shirt, and she has some artistic ability creating posters. So she seems like a well-rounded kid. The only personality trait she has in this episode, unfortunately, is nobody believes me, so please help. Yeah. I'm trying my very best to defend her, but I can't get much deeper than that. I do have to say on a lighter note that she has actually appeared in an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode, but you have to look for her. She was in the Tale of the Stone Maiden in season 7, episode 4, and she actually continues to act today with notable roles such as Molly McDonald in the kids show Arthur that we all know and love from Canada, and most recently Super Troopers 2, and also the House Director's Cut from 2023 this year. She's also a director and producer, so whatever experience she got from Goosebumps has served her well since she's still active.
Super Trooper 2, that's I wish I could place her. Good. I want to know who she ended up like, because I have this like iconic, like, this is how I picture her. So like seeing her as a fully grown human is so crazy. You are right though, man. Everybody picks on her literally the whole time.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's too much. I mean, Are You Afraid of the Dark tends to have its fair share of parents not believing kids that monsters and ghosts are chasing them, but this is like let's beat on our child show and
Yeah.
somehow become the victims ourselves of the second dummy who rises up for his revenge after destroying Slappy. So it's actually a very grim and morbid Goosebumps episode. I don't think it really has a moral or lesson or even a lighthearted ending. It's just kind of the end, or is it, oh, this family's probably going to die too, so don't worry about them.
Yeah. Dennis.
It's good to be back in the family again.
What a goof. He's worse than Howdy Doody.
So is.
Such a menace.
Yeah, he is. Now I'm just thinking about Mr. Wilson in my head. That kid is a pain in the ass.
And I'm just picturing the old 90s Nickelodeon bumper whenever he's sitting down at the TV and they had Mr. Wilson pop out of the television set.
Yeah.
I just hear that now when he comes out.
God, I used to watch that show so much on Sunday mornings in the early 90s.
Dennis the Menace will be back after these messages.
Fun times. Well, moving on to the next category, which is main doll character. What you got for us, Alex?
Well, the main and I feel like this is where we're going to flip, Brett, because I know you're going to have far more to share about Slappy than I will about Melissa. But Melissa was I'm sorry, not Melissa. Susan was played by Amanda Walsh, and she was the character who was slowly being turned into the doll, which alone, the idea of being transformed into something lifeless is terrifying. So I guess for audiences, I don't know what would be more terrifying. A living doll that can haunt and destroy you and kill you and nobody would believe you, or being slowly transformed into a lifeless porcelain doll and no one is coming to your aid and you're trapped.
Pick your poison.
Yeah, I mean they both suck. You're screwed either way. You see that she has slowly been transformed. She's been doing this for a while. Most of her face is porcelain. Even when her hand is removed, you hear that porcelain rubbing sound. Her cognitive abilities have been declining also because she's having a very difficult time communicating. And even at the very end, whenever they're trying, when not Susan, when Melissa is trying to get Susan out to the attic, even then she's struggling because her limbs are becoming more rigid. Now, obviously, we know how it ends, but just for Susan is not a terrifying character, but the situation that she has been put into is what is terrifying.
Agreed.
And again, Brett has some amazing, interesting notes. Amanda Walsh returns as Ashley's friend in The Tale of a Door Unlocked. Since both Are You Afraid of the Dark tales really do center around a doorway to another world. She is also still acting today with her most recent role as Ro Wells in Pretty Hard Cases, which was in 2023.
Yeah. And I do want to give a shout out to Cortland, who we had on our Super Specs Patreon episode. He actually interviewed Amanda Walsh back when he was doing Are You Afraid of the Dark on his podcast Up All Night. So if you're interested in hearing more from her about her experience on Are You Afraid of the Dark, check that episode out.
The fact that she was also in Door Unlocked is wild. And that, like, now that we're saying that, like, can we please talk about the fact that, like, somebody had to put that door in that house, right? So, like, there's two things that are happening that are absolutely baffling to me, because that door has to be connected to that dollhouse, which means somebody built the dollhouse and was like, I need a door for the portal, right? Let's cut into this attic. And then secondly, so the dollhouse itself has the motivation to turn these people into dolls. But why? Does it just want something
Is it
inside
lovely?
of it? Yeah.
It just wants to be filled with people.
Yeah.
Well,
'Cause at a
if you
certain po-
if you go with the concept that the person who made the pinball machine also made this dollhouse, and they also made the doors, the door unlocked.
Yeah.
But with the idea of the pinball taking in players, then you could also have the same concept of it's doing the same thing. It's taking in players. It's taking away that innocence. So
Yeah.
there's probably quite a bit of backstory that you could potentially go with this maker of being maybe absorbing the. I mean, if you want to go with what was the one where the one kid was? I mean, he was an old person, but he was taking everybody's youth.
Goosebumps, or Are You Afraid of the Dark?
It was Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Tale of the Captured Souls, Peter Crone III.
What if instead of being that's how he was gaining everyone's youth, by having them trapped into these different childlike toys, and he takes their youth?
It's very possible.
Again, all speculation. I mean, that's fan theory, but
we need a Mr. Olsen recurring storyline here and there, because I really feel like he's got the potential as a malicious tinker who really just wants revenge on kids who have somehow wronged him or made fun of him.
I mean, there's so many like little items that like get into kids' hands that like end up causing them trouble, like, you know, that music box, right? Like, like just like, yeah, I just think that there is, that's the key. That's what it needed. One more season, just all connecting that.
Yeah. If I wasn't so busy with this podcast, seriously, I would develop the dark first, but I can only do so many things at once. This is definitely my headcanon. So for Night of the Living Dummy 2, of course, we have Slappy, the titular dummy character, played by Cal Dodd, who does the voice for him. From the moment we first lay eyes on him, we, the audience, actually know he's nothing but trouble. I mean, he has drastically chiseled features into his sinister, eye-darting, face, which is pretty much nightmare fuel for anyone believing dummies can come to life on their own. I mean, I think they're both equally scary, both iterations in their own way. It's just that fire red hair and those sculpted eyebrows and the big honking eyes that look like they're gonna pop out of his sockets, just like Judge Doom in his eyes. It's crazy. That's another trauma road I don't really want to go down right now, but anyways, seeing him become more and more animated as the story progresses further really drives home our feelings of dread, not knowing that Slappy has an agenda up his sleeve, which he carries out by nightfall. Luckily, we witness a very satisfying demise to his reign of terror, but for any Goosebumps fan who's seen other episodes in the series, he'll be back to dish out more punishment in at least 2 more tales, which we mentioned, Night of the Living Dummy 3 and Bride of the Living Dummy. And if you want a little bit more extra to that for the books, there's also Slappy's Nightmare, which is a Goosebumps 2000s book, and then, of course, the Slappy World side series that came out in the 2010s. There's a side note trivia thing I have for Cal Dodd. He continues to do voice work today, actually, with his most recent role being Ron Rapidfire on Paw Patrol Super Rescue in the year 2022. He has also played Slappy in all 4 dummy episodes from the Goosebumps TV series, which includes this one, Night of the Living Dummy 3, both parts, and Bride of the Living Dummy, which is a Goosebumps 2000 book as well, number 2. So there's that for you.
Yeah, this Slappy character is very quickly, obviously up to no good. And I think the only way you could make a doll creepier is maybe give them like a hayseed sort of accent and have them yuck at you. That's the only thing more terrifying is actually Dennis. Dennis.
Yeah, like they're skirting the line between pretending to be a dummy and being like an evil sentient being.
I don't know.
It's uncanny valley for me.
I would think what would be scary is if the doll never spoke. If it just stared and you could hear it moving, but you could never hear it speak, and you'd never know what it was thinking until it was doing it.
What about the eyebrows moving? Do you think that would enhance it?
Oh yeah, I mean movement, so absolutely, but never speak. But
Now I'm
if
getting, now
if
I'm
you
getting, now I'm getting Silent Servant vibes, which we also did a versus of,
Yeah.
because it's literally just a walking scarecrow puppet with no eyeballs, and it's carrying out all these misdeeds.
Yeah, if you just saw the mannequin just sitting on a shelf somewhere, and the head turn and the eyebrows slowly move, and
Ugh.
then, but that's it. I mean, the movement is subtle, and then after a while, you look back, it's gone, but you can hear the when it's running away.
Oh yeah, the pitter patter of its feet. Yeah, I think the only thing that could make it like scarier. I agree that like having it not talk at all is actually a bit scarier. But I think if you want to really drive it home, have it just like also eat sandwiches, like just occasionally quiet, but for no reason at all. It's just like eating a turkey sandwich. You're like,
Puppets have digestive systems all of a sudden.
like, uncomfortable. What do you even do with that food? Are you just chewing it up and spitting it out? This is terrifying. Please stop making sandwiches.
Yeah. It just makes me think I never want to use a dummy as a lunchbox, but I could see someone doing that just as some sort of weird fetish.
I would do that just to mess with people.
Yeah. I think the point you guys have here about Slappy being more menacing when he doesn't talk is kind of the Zebo angle, because we really don't see him directly. It's just more like maybe the ghost or the memory of him in that funhouse mirror, and then we see like hints of him being around, but not actually directly. Where we see the dummy pop out of door 6, we see like the cigar smoke from the corner of Josh's house, and then of course the big old clown footprint in the pudding, and of course the balloon at the end. So it's like the things that are affected by this spirit, this being, that normally wouldn't be. I think there's like a dissonance there that really feeds into our imaginations when it comes to fear, like something primal.
Isn't there something? Isn't there like cigar spaghetti in that episode? Too?
Yeah. Oh, that's gross. Yeah, that one as well. Well, moving on to the use of the doll theme, Alex, what do you have to say about Susan herself?
Well, Susan obviously is the main character who has been turned into a doll, or a supporting character has been turned into a doll. But and also the lead character was also doing the same. But whereas instead of just focusing on just the dolls, you also have the doll house, which plays a big part of the episode. I don't really think that Goosebumps really dives into a doll house, because you got mannequins, so you do a lot of ventriloquist things and stuff like that. But this one really has more of an eerie feeling as opposed to just outright terror, because you also can be on the inside of the dollhouse, but you see the reality on the outside whenever you see a giant Aunt Sally, and whenever she's shining a flashlight, the main character is shining the flashlight into the house. That's when you see a light come through the keyhole, and the door of reality between the two is really intriguing. And even the doll house itself is creepy, just with the sense that she's got this lifeline, and now all of a sudden this lifeline has been severed, and you don't have a way out. And going along with just the fact that it really feels like a dollhouse, because they have all these oversized props to really make them feel like they have been dwarfed and they are slowly turning into a miniature doll. So it really has a really good sense of what it feels like to not only turn into a doll, but be a doll and be in a doll house, which I think is pretty cool. We don't really get to see a whole lot of that, especially in both of these anthology series.
Yeah, I wish they did it more, like playing with the doll theme. It's a shame we only get this episode and then like that brief cameo in dark music.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a lot of
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one.
How could you? We talked about it in another versus. Episode 38 to be exact.
Cortland's favorite part.
Yep.
Episode really early on, and it's not exactly dolls. I mean, it's sort of dolls. It's like dolls and stuffed animals. What's that called? Where the girl goes to visit her awful cousin, and she
Lonely Ghost.
Yeah, Lonely Ghost. Help me. That episode's she ends up in that room. She gets trapped by like, oh, look at all these stuffed animals and dolls and stuff. I need to go have those, even though she's like 12 or 13. I'm like, you're a little too old to be that, like, to be tricked by toys like that at this point. But serves her right. But that's another, like, I think they use the theme for like toys really well and like dolls.
And the speculation, I mean, we were already coming up with speculations for where this could potentially be from and why, but because there's so much unanswered stuff and you could really just want to go into it more, which I think is a good use of storytelling, always leave them wanting more. But that's all just speculation. What we see in the episode itself, it really does a good job at world building between both of these realities within just a few minutes.
Yeah, it definitely feels like the Dangerous Soup in a sense that, it gives you a taste of what's happening here, but because you get like a vague sense of what's going on with the mechanics of the dollhouse and how it affects people interacting with it, it's like, well, how can we apply this to other situations? What if other kids or other adults interact with it? I want to see the origin story of this house being built and being imbued with dark magic. Come on. Well, for the use of the doll theme, I'm going to have to use that in air quotes because this was a hard pairing from the get-go, doll and dummy. But, it's in the same realm, so I'm going to just consider dummies dolls for the sake of this argument. We have Dennis and Slappy, of course, being used by Amy, both lifelessly, and then when they eventually come alive by the end of the episode. Obviously, Slappy's more alive than Dennis, but I do like that twist. I find it interesting that he comes to life specifically due to Amy reading this weird incantation or spell on a card in his pocket, because that also makes me think, well, this character probably came from like a Sardo's Magic Mansion type place, or was just constantly shuffled around different like Goodwill type stores, thrift shops, because it had such an evil power to it or origin that it just couldn't stay in one household. So I feel like a lot of the doll theme really has to do with the backstory and all the scheming that Slappy has to deal with, rather than just Slappy himself as a character, because a lot of the stuff he does is like slapsticky, pun intended. But I like the effective use of like all the mischief he causes, and we don't see it directly. We get hints that he's doing it, kind of like what we mentioned earlier with Zebo showing his influence with Josh and Laughing in the Dark. So I think a lot of the doll theme really just stems from the deeds that he carries out, and then of course the confrontation with Dennis and Slappy at the end that breaks him. Dolls are very fragile creatures. Not creatures. They're fragile toys because they're made out of porcelain, so we're reminded of that when his head breaks open. And demystifies it when we literally see green mist ooze out for whatever reason. And then we just see Dennis do the same thing. I mean, it's pretty straightforward in this episode. And it leads you to believe that Dennis could be the next villain if Night of the Living Dummy 2 had a part 2. And it was his turn to wreak havoc on the family now for being mistreated, perhaps. So it does leave a little bit to the imagination of what happened before with where Slappy was before, and also after with what Dennis is going to do now that he's alive and has some power in his hands. We also see Amy's friend's little sister play with dolls. I believe her name is Alicia. So, there's that tying too, just a little bit. Got some dollhouse drama going on there.
And now we begin another dramatic episode of Dollhouse Drama.
And that's it.
Slappy is so interesting. Slappy and Dennis are really interesting as like the doll theme, and it's that little sister when she's playing with the dolls. That scene is actually pretty intense. Like
his death grip, it's like he's gonna rip her hand off.
Yeah, like that's scary. That's like insanely scary.
Same with Amy and her hand getting caught in the back when she's like trying to remove it during her performance at family night. It's like, wow, how I think that's part of the the lingering dread that comes with this episode, when you really think about it, is that at any moment, Slappy, if he's close enough to you, can take control over the situation, and suddenly you're powerless, even though you thought you had control, because who's controlling who through their interaction.
Yeah, I think my only question with these two, and I guess we talked about it a little earlier, is like, okay, Slappy comes alive when that spell is read. Is that the same thing that makes Dennis come alive? Does it work on all dolls? Was Dennis already alive?
Yeah, because his head popped off in the beginning, but we didn't really see anything happen to him after Amy read the card. But at the same time, I was a little confused when Dennis had that blurry tackle with Slappy and then knocked the shinola out of him, that green mist. And I'm like, does Dennis have that green mist inside of him too when she read that incantation? And what is that from? It leaves some unanswered questions that I want to explore more too, with the nature of how they become alive in this tale.
All right, well, shall we move on to our last category?
I think so.
All right, so our last category is lasting appeal. And I don't know how Brett feels about this, but I do feel that Are You Afraid of the Dark has more of a timeless feel than Goosebumps does, because a lot of the tropes that you see, and I don't mean that as a dig, they're both time capsules of their era, and I mean, even then, you can still look at Are You Afraid of the Dark and still tell that it's 90s, but there are a lot of the tropes that you have with families and kids and the horror tropes, you get a lot of them really, really bad in Goosebumps, where, again, it's a bit more campy and cheesy. But Are You Afraid of the Dark, especially this one, feels a whole lot more, what's the word, acceptable by today's standards, because it's not bogged down by technology. Because, I mean, a lot of these shows, you put technology in it, put the use of a cell phone in it, and how much different would things be? There wouldn't really be a whole lot more different for this episode, because the circumstance is going to be the same. First of all, you're out in the rural America. You're not going to get much of a signal. But even then, the technology isn't going to save you with what's going on in this situation, because you're dealing with a supernatural environment. The use of dolls, kids still play with dolls. My niece, who is let's see, she's about 7 or 8 years old. Barbies everywhere in her house. Still has the Barbie doll house. They are still doing these things. They still have shelves upon shelves of dolls at any store. Kids still use their imagination. They still play with action figures. They still play with dolls. They still play with doll houses and accessories. And the idea of this innocent thing they're playing with could potentially suck them in and turn them into a doll. It's still a terrifying concept. It's not dated at all. That idea is not, that's something that is still terrifying. And also the fact that, what would we do for our best friend? Because a lot of the problems that you see with the Goosebumps episode, which we had actually talked about earlier, was the things that the parents do. That's such 90s parents cliche for sitcoms and TV shows back in the 90s. There's not a whole lot of that in this episode. Everything that outside of the fact that they're in a huge house and they're having this conversation right next to Susan's room. Why would they still do that? Or not Susan's room, but you know what I'm talking about. But that's just part of the storytelling, unfortunately. But their motivations and the characters' motivations for wanting to protect my child, but also I went to go save my friend. It's all very compelling storytelling that is not hindered by the passage of time. It's still just as relevant now as it was in 95.
Well said. So for Night of the Living Dummy 2, its lasting appeal really begins with this tale and just expands out there with the Goosebumps franchise. I mean, anyone who's ever seen, played with, or owned a dummy, obviously the Tales of Fright Fest, hence why I'm defending this one, because I have such vivid nightmares of it. Well, used to, not anymore. I feel there's just nothing scarier than, something you love playing with coming to life, knowing it can take control of the situation and wreak havoc in any way it chooses, like we said before, with Amy getting her hand caught in the dummy, or like it having a death grip on Alicia's hand all of a sudden. Creepy dummies have always been around from pop culture, Twilight Zone, Tales from the Dark Side, even in other Goosebumps tales. So it's like one of those weird tropes that they always like to play with, where what happens when we give life to something that has human-like features, and how can we twist it because it's unnatural versus like an actual human being. And I really find that thought-provoking, that idea where things come to life and suddenly they have this like dark agenda more often than not, to just kind of get back at humans for maybe even having an easier life because they're organic creatures instead of just lifeless dolls who can only come to life with like a spell or whatever Pixar magic Toy Story uses.
I mean, they're still doing that in movies now because they came out with that Megan movie not that long ago.
Megan, what's that? Besides your wife?
No, yeah, I said my wife, but it's a movie that had just come out not that long ago of I think a mom had made or designed or bought a robot that was kind of there to be a fake friend to protect her daughter, but it becomes sentient and becomes homicidal in protecting.
Yeah.
So that trope, they're still using it today.
I thought we were having a conversation.
Yeah, whether it's magic or technology, when it comes to lifelike humanoid products, let's put it that way, they always seem to lean towards evil, which I find fascinating. But that aside, I mean, obviously Slappy is one of the poster childs of Goosebumps franchise, especially in the books. I mean, once he made his name known with his own series of entries in the line from Goosebumps 2000, Slappy World, etc., even in some of the video games, as we mentioned earlier, that Sam and I have played, there's just no denying that Goosebumps is here to stay. And Night of the Living Dummy is one of those staple episodes that everyone immediately thinks of, along with like The Haunted Mask or Say Cheese and Die, that they just love revisiting in the series, both for nostalgia's sake and for the fact that there's some of the edgier episodes among the campy ones to offer. So, even if it doesn't seem as edgy as it does now, probably because we're just used to it and looking through it through nostalgia goggles. Back when it first came out, Night of the Living Dummy was definitely a contender for one of the scarier, if not scariest, Goosebumps episode, based on the premise and all the unanswered questions that surround how the dummies came to life and what they do to the families that they're with. How do you feel about my episode, Alex? And I'll say the same about yours when you're done.
I love your episode. I love that episode. Goosebumps I could far easier watch Goosebumps as a kid than I could Are You Afraid of the Dark? And Slappy, I loved Slappy. And I had said before, I wasn't really scared of dummies and dolls and things like that as a kid, still not. But I loved that idea. And it is, like you said, it is one of the most iconic episodes. And Megan and I, we would talk about Goosebumps with Sam. And one of the first episodes that she mentioned was Night of the Living Dummy. And she remembers the cover art. I mean, he is an iconic character. And I love that episode. Absolutely love that episode.
Awesome. And for the record, I enjoy your episode as well. Maybe it's not in like the top 5 for me of Are You Afraid of the Dark, but it definitely ranks up there, like maybe top 10 or even top 15, somewhere in that range. I know this episode is really popular with girls who grew up watching Are You Afraid of the Dark in the 90s, as I found interacting with fans over the years, which makes sense because maybe they played with dolls as well, or they just found a lot of beauty in the nature of Melissa and Susan's friendship, which is very commendable. It's kind of like on par with Arnold and Gerald from Hey Arnold. Yeah. They'll do anything for each other, even risk their lives, which I find very, very noble. I just wish that they really explored the unanswered question more, of like who made the doll house, why does the door lead to nowhere, shouldn't there be a balcony there, and tons of other questions we mentioned. But I think that's part of the charm. I feel like more often than not, it's better to to hold back or withhold some of the information rather than just let it all go. Like, I know Goosebumps tends to be more kind of overt and in your face with its subject matter. Not always, but I'd say more than 50% of the time. And Are You Afraid of the Dark definitely takes the more subtle, mysterious approach, which I appreciate. And this one for me, what I appreciate most, besides Susan and Melissa's friendship, is also the ambience. Like, it really makes you feel like you're going into the dollhouse with Melissa, and things are slowing down, and you feel like if you're really sucked into the episode, you could become a doll too. Oh, hey Alex, you're already in the dollhouse. You better get out of there before you turn to porcelain. Side note, there's a door. Use it. So yeah, I enjoy it. It's not one of my all-time favorites, but it is a very solid episode. Uh-oh. Do we have to end the episode now because you're dead?
I'm lifeless, just like everyone else on YouTube.
Yeah. No, I think we got more life than everyone else. We're kind of above the generic YouTuber. Fight me. So with that being said, any final thoughts, Derek, before we do our final verdict?
These are, for me, they're both iconic. You said something about it not being in your top 5. It is for me a top 5, and maybe that's nostalgia based, but like, I remembered this episode more than almost any other episode. The version of her as the doll like haunts me, with that like plaster over her face going porcelain, like that sticks in my head. And I mean, Slappy, it's Slappy. Like, there's not, you don't have to say a lot more than that. When you think of Goosebumps, you think of, and for me, I think of Goosebumps in 2 things, right? It's not a bunch of things. It's 2 things. It's Slappy, and it's the Say Cheese and Die cover, right? That barbecue.
Interesting. Yeah, that's my favorite, by the way.
Those are the 2 things, like, they're forever etched in my brain. Like, and so like, this is a lot more difficult than like probably a lot of things would have been, right? Because like, I'm an Are You Afraid of the Dark loyalist, but like, you want to give me an episode that's gonna make me like work, like it's this episode. Like, I remember even when we reviewed it on our podcast, like I was just like, this is good. This is peak, like, camp mixed with just enough terror for like a kid's show,
Yeah, really skirts that line of what's acceptable back then. And I applaud it for pushing it that far.
Yeah, I mean, literally, they were just like half a step from Slappy like putting a knife into that like little girl.
Yeah.
Like,
it's almost like you're anticipating it looking back now with his mischief escalating each time and getting more serious and intense. Like, if the episode went 10 minutes longer and he didn't get his skull cracked open by Dennis, that was probably his next move.
That guitar situation,
right?
Like,
he was pulling a Kurt Cobain there.
Yeah, he was gonna do some damage. Like that's crazy.
Yeah. He doesn't mess around, even if he doesn't have a clear agenda for what he wants to accomplish.
Yeah. No real game plan, but definitely chaos. He's like Goosebumps Joker.
Yes. Yes.
Most definitely.
Well, that was fun. Who's for Chinese?
I'm sure you're probably sick of dolls and dummies right now, but let's sit on the bed and cuddle with some of our furry friends that are behind me as we go to a commercial break. But when we get back, we are going to do our final verdict and maybe a segment or 2. So don't go anywhere.
Are you afraid of the dark? We'll return in a moment.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are about to witness one of the 7 wonders of the world. At about 11:30 Eastern Standard Time, through this window, our buddy Rocco will descend the staircase as he does every night for a glass of milk.
And he ain't dressed for the occasion.
Ever get caught in the act watching something you weren't supposed to? Join us next time on Patreon as we cover one scandalous episode of Rocko's Modern Life in our episode review of Camera Shy. We'll be joined by a friend and fellow Rocko fan, Russ Montague, and it's going to be quite the episode overall. See, I can't even get through this commercial. You can find all this action-packed Rocko-rific action here on Patreon.
And now, back to our show.
Alrighty, I think we've played with our therapy dolls enough, and we've kind of calmed down from feeling a little bit traumatized by dolls and dummies, and Alex is apparently have waited long enough that he turned into a doll or a frozen, lifeless porcelain doll. So I guess Derek is just going to have to carry the weight of the rest of this episode with me. Derek, go through your final verdict and your point allocation for each category, please.
Okay, so for the first category, story, this is hard. This is like probably the hardest category in here. I think every other one has a clear like victor. You know,
I do want to say you can give ties for points for each category if you need to.
And I am so glad because story is definitely, it's a tie. Like they are both very well thought, or maybe not well thought out is not the word I'm looking for, but they both are intriguing. They both are entertaining. They both ask you to like suspend a little bit of disbelief, but also make you want to know more in the right way, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't all break down. Like that's the problem. When you watch these old Goosebumps and some of the old Goosebumps and some of the old Are You Afraid of the Dark, you run into this thing where you're like, that doesn't work, right? You talked about it, Alex talked about it in I believe your closing, right? Where you talk about how cell phones can like ruin things so easily. Like just having a cell phone can ruin things. The tale of the phone police is real, like dated and like hard to hang on to. It's one of my favorite episodes. It's so fun, but it's so dorky now when you look at it. Like that's not happening. Prank calls, we carry caller ID now. Like, so the fact that both of these like can hold up to the scrutiny now, right? Where like even technology, you know, existing, like these still survive. Like these horrors still exist. So they both get a point.
Awesome.
Main human character. This is a lot easier to delineate between the two, and it 100% has to go to Alex.
I don't blame you.
The reason being is the main character of you know, Night of the Living Dummy 2, it's not her. It's Slappy. Like, it just is Slappy. Like, when it all breaks down, like, yeah, we're following her, but we're following her because she has Slappy. If Slappy was anywhere else, we wouldn't be with her, right? And like Melissa is a main character. You talked about, you know, how she goes after a friend no matter how angry her like aunt and uncle are gonna be. Like she has a sense of duty, she has a sense of right. She's not a punching bag, right? And that's the thing, is like Slappy makes a victim of the main character, like, and overshadows her entirely in Night of the Living Dummy. So that point goes to Alex. Main doll character. Again, this is such an easy line to draw because, like, while not a traditional doll, it's Slappy, right? Like, it's Slappy. Like, you think, like, you look at, you know, the tail, like, you look at, there's the dollhouse is great, right? And all that, but like Susan as the doll is not the, like, it's an iconic image for me personally, but nobody's like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna get this tattoo of this girl kind of as a doll. I want to put that on my body forever. That's weird.
She's got a
No.
pretty face that counts for something.
Yeah, like no, that's a little girl. Like she just is a little girl. She's not, she's kind of a doll. Her hands, like you can maybe get one of that hand that comes off, right? But it's Slappy. He's just iconic, right?
Hard to shake that.
Yeah, agreed.
It is hard to shake that. Which goes into doll theme, however, and that 100% has to go to Alex, right? You make such a valid point about the doll house included in the doll theme, right? It extends beyond the doll itself. They expand, they have that room in the attic, right? With all those oversized things. Like it is immersed in doll theme. It goes beyond just the one thing being a doll. It is all about the world of dolls, and that's what makes it scary, right? Because you pointed this out. Little girls and little boys and everyone has been playing with dolls forever, right? That's why we have those scary Victorian dolls. They've existed for as long as people have made toys, some version of dolls. And so to expand on that theme and to really make every part of it terrifying, the house becoming a doll, right? Even the room in the house with more doll stuff, like all of it, it just absolutely has to go there. Alex gets that. And lasting appeal. Right, you said it yourself, right? Like, for you, it's not even a top 5 Are You Afraid of the Dark episode, and you're right. Like, I love it. It is a top 5. It's probably a top 3 for me. But also, it's because I remember it, and not everyone does. Like, if they're talking to me about Are You Afraid of the Dark, and I'm like, remember, because the dollhouse and the girl's, her hand comes off, and they're like, no, you mean the ghastly grinner? I remember that guy. Right? Like, I'm like, no, because the
we'll have a bone to pick with him next season, by the way.
Excellent. Because the friend, she steals the keys, and her aunt and uncle are whisper yelling right next to her.
She's sleeping in the sunroom.
Yeah. Nobody's like, oh yeah, that part really resonated with me. But it did.
I love the
me.
septic tank.
Bingo. Remember that part? Like, no, nobody remembers it. The door. Why does the door connect to the dollhouse? That's crazy. Nobody remembers it. I mean, there are some of us that do, but it's not the like icon that Slappy is, right? And Slappy is iconic in every variation of Slappy, right? He's iconic on cover photos for books. He's iconic in this episode and the episodes that follow it. He's iconic in the movies now. Like, he exists. He is beyond
multidimensionally.
Yeah, he's just beyond even like Goosebumps, right? That like image has outgrown the franchise it's a part of, and for that reason, Brett gets the point on lasting appeal.
Woohoo! You know what that means.
Yep.
Drum roll. Derek?
It's a tie.
Face your opponents. We have a draw.
Well done.
It's a tie because I gave you both points for story.
Which is justified.
It's too hard. It's too difficult. And I'm a person who loves to pick a favorite.
That's fair. I mean, that's totally fair. They're both great episodes in their own right. And, you know, it's not the first time we've tied either. We've also tied for, it's eluding me now, Laughing in the Dark versus One Day at Horrorland when we did that for season 3. And I think our Thanksgiving episode and also our St. Patrick's Day versus. So if you really
and our last episode, the two Pigeon Man and
Field Trip from Hey
Field
Arnold.
Trip. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if you have two powerhouse episodes going together, chances are it's going to be hard to pick, which is totally fine.
I think if you're looking at these, I think out the gate, you want to be like, Night of the Living Dummy is going to run away with this, right? But like when you break it down, this is such a good episode, The Tale of the Dollmaker, which the house is the Dollmaker. That's the
titling is a little iffy,
misleading,
but I kind of give it a pass. I wish it was referring to like the actual Dollmaker instead of the house, or like just some other term to describe the way
the tale of the girl who would become a doll if she had stayed in the house.
Right? Imagine fitting that all on the screen. You're like, get out of the Midnight Society. You don't know how to title things.
I'm doing this. That's why I can't get hired on, is because I always want to give more information.
I am right there with you. That's why I lost Rename Game for Dark Music versus Stay Out of the Basement. I thought Trapped in Chlorophyll's Basement Jungle was a zinger, but no one liked it. They went with Alex's Root of All Evil.
Simple, clean. Alex, it's smart. I can't do that. I don't have that ability.
Well, this is a very fun versus match, and we're very thankful to have you here as a judge, Derek. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had a blast.
But before we go, we're going to do a segment that is exclusive to our verses, as you all know, Slimesters and Gackoids, but mainly Gackoids because of his Patreon. We are going to do Rename Game. So we're actually going to rename our titles for each of these. And because you're the judge, Derek, you get to rename both. So roll the jingle. Okay, so for Rename Game, you know how it works. Which is a better title for these two terrifying tales? We're going to take a crack at it and see if we can make a better title for The Tale of the Dollmaker and Night of the Living Dummy 2. And naturally, how we designed it is that whoever's defending their episode, they get to rename theirs, and whoever judges get to rename both of them. So we'll start with Alex for Dollmaker, and then we'll go to Derek, and then we'll do me for Dummy, and then Derek for Dummy.
Excellent.
Well, my renamed title for The Tale of the Dollmaker is The Tale of Toys in the Attic.
Ooh, Aerosmith reference. Love it. Zing.
That's real good.
Yeah. We got Derek for Dollmaker.
I think if I am going to rename The Tale of the Dollmaker, it's got to be The Tale of the Parents Who Left Their Doll Daughter Behind.
Yes. Yes. I like that as well, just for the hilarity of it. And it's true. Who saves their house and moves away? No, I like it a lot.
Or The Summer I Was a Doll.
Yeah. I know what you dolled last summer.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of puns, but, that's just me with wordplay. So for Night of the Living Dummy 2, I'm going to rename this one Devil Doll's Demonic Rampage. Another title that I also considered is Look Who's Stalking Now, because Slappy likes to scheme and plan and do misdeeds when no one's looking.
Look Who's Stalking Now is so good.
I also like that it has like a movie tie-in of like a baby talking, so why not?
That's real fun. Let's see, Night of the Living Dummy 2. Let's go with 2 out of 3 children aren't bad.
2 out of 3 children aren't bad? Yeah.
Those parents really did hate one of their daughters.
Yeah. Unfortunate. You could also rename it Where's Night of the Living Dummy 1?
Yeah.
But that's just a joke one.
Or go with Night of the Living Dummy 2 for the follow-up episode.
Wouldn't that make it Night of the Living Dummy 4?
Yeah. Exponentially growing.
Too confusing. Technically, that'd be Bride of the Living Dummy for going sequential order, but we don't want to get drowned out in semantics. Okay, so our recap one more time in order of our titles.
Tale of Toys in the Attic.
The Summer I Spent as a Doll.
Alrighty. And for Night of the Living Dummy 2, I had Look Who's Stalking Now.
And I will go with 2 of 3 children are bad.
Awesome. Well, we'll post those titles on Instagram once this episode releases, and we'll have all of our audience members vote on to see which one is their favorite title. I believe the last verses we covered, which was Oh Lucky Monster versus Superstitious Stimpy.
Nathan,
that's it, of Pop Culture Northwest, of course. He won with How Oblina Got Her Groove Back for Oh Lucky Monster, which...
That was smooth.
Come on. And then for the Ren and Stimpy one, you won, Alex, with The Unlucky Beast. So simple and clean is the way to go for you. Awesome. Any final thoughts before we head out for today and put our dolls away from play?
Final thought for me was both these episodes are awesome. I really love them, and I agree with Derek. At first, I thought it was going to be a steal for Night of the Living Dummy 2, so it was really fun to be able to bring this episode up a bit more. And also, as a final thought on my part, thank you, Derek, for being here. It was great to meet you, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, I had a blast. It was awesome meeting you, Alex. Always awesome to see you again, Brett. Thank you both for having me. I love talking about this stuff, man.
We do too. That's why we love finding fans and other people who keep the stories alive in our hearts. And thank you again, Derek, for being here. I know you're used to being with your 3 other lackeys from Goosebumps / Are You Afraid of the Dark podcast, but I'm very happy that we got to talk about something that you're passionate about as well. And hopefully we'll do more collaborations in the future together.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, Gackoids. Our closing question today. Which doll-themed episodes of the 90s TV shows are your favorite and why? Are you partial to Tale of the Dollmaker, or perhaps you're a Night of the Living Dummy fan? Write to us via email at splatattack2021@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram at Splat Attack Podcast. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're not already at Splat Attack Podcast. We're really pushing to get that 1,000 subscribers so that we can unlock all the cool features that we're going to be getting from YouTube Studios. So definitely help us in that crusade. Or, you could also just interact with us wherever you find us on social media. We can even talk with you on Patreon, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you find us. It doesn't matter. Just keep talking 90s Nick with us. You can also support us as well, in addition to Patreon, by going to our Bonfire store and buying a shirt or mug. We will do our best to get some more designs up soon. We've just been really busy with bonus content lately, so hopefully we'll have some new designs there soon for all of you to enjoy and share with your friends and family. Thank you again, Derek, for joining us today. It's been a real treat. Would you like to plug anything before we go?
Yeah, I mean, I have a podcast with my 3 best friends. It's called Are You Afraid of the Dark? We already ran through all of the Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes. We are about midway through Goosebumps. That section's called like Goosebumps, but with more breakdancing. King of Bad Names, and Too Long to Say all of them. There's a ton. We do Erie, Indiana for a while in there as well. There's some movies that we do. Lots of fun nostalgia stuff.
Agreed. Yeah, I've been on their podcast a couple of times for some Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes. It was just so much fun to talk with them and share that feeling of camaraderie and nostalgia for this show. So definitely give their episodes a listen and check them out. All right, tune in next time, Gackoids, when we grab our old video camera and tape our best friends doing totally zany and inappropriate things for our episode review of Rocko's Modern Life Camera Shy. It's going to be a blast to revisit this classic Rocko episode together in the Chameleon Brothers Lounge, where you can find all this retro-rific action only on Splat Attack. Until then, Alex, will you drain the slime tank for us, please? I need to find a way out of this dollhouse before we all turn into dolls.
Aye, Co-Captain. Let me ask Slappy to see if he knows a safe way out.
Yeah, I don't think that's such a good idea.
Why not? Because
I'm no dummy. Slappy would love nothing more for us than to remain here with him so he can push us around. I mean, look at the way he's staring at me. He's just waiting for me to make a wrong move and kill me in my sleep. Ugh. Ugh. Alrighty, splat you later. Let us out! Let us out!
Run, but you cannot
Reprise the theme song and roll the credits.
I reckon it's time for me to go.
I'm glad that's over. Now for a peaceful night's sleep.
Well, that does it for now.
Yeah, we gotta catch a train.
Since I'm going home, you can't my arts and crafts project. It's a tweezer holder.
All right, guys, let's go fly.
How long have we been away?
See you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
He said he couldn't breathe in there.
Hey, Marco, you can forget about Shane. He thinks you got a face like a can of worms.
Amy? Stop it. I didn't say it. He did. I'm sure I saw her. At the end of a long corridor, there was this weird light.
Honey. Keep away from me.
My father's Amy, remember?
I knew you'd come. What's wrong with you? You look just like... Doll. But how? What's happened to you?